everybody, welcome to the Able Gardener, and today I'm planting potatoes in containers. So if you want to know anything about planting potatoes in containers, come along with me and I'll show you everything I know. Now, I'm no expert. I've only been growing potatoes for probably 3 or 4 years, but I'll tell you what I know and things that I've learned. So let's just start off by talking about potatoes. Well, let's go ahead and discuss potatoes, or potato anatomy. If you look at the potato and you kind of just look it over, you usually see a little dimple in the potato. And that's where the potato grew. It actually came from the mother potato and started growing from this area right here. And then as the other potato and the root died, then that little root right here dried up, and this is what was harvested. So that's the heel end. And then usually just opposite the heel end is the rose end. And they probably call this the rose end because it has so many eyes on that end. It kind of looks like a rosebud. There are also eyes around the sides of the potato. Now, this size potato is something that you could either cut in half or you can plant this hole in the ground. And I do both. If it's a big potato, I'll cut it in two. And if it's a smaller potato, say the size of a chicken egg, I'll go ahead and plant that hole. You usually buy your potatoes as certified seed potatoes, and you can see that on the front of the bag, blue tag certified seed potatoes. But make sure that they're certified, and that just means that they're certified to not get blight while they're growing. So it's certified against blight. And then they're called seed potatoes just because they have a certain number of eyes on here. Most people call them eyes, or when they start growing, they call them chits, or as they grow, it's called chitting. So we can take this potato and we can cut it in two, because as you see, it has at least 2 eyes on it. Well, it has quite a few on this end. I could take a couple of those off, but I'm not going to. It has one here, and it's got a bigger one down here and one here. So I can cut that in two, just like this. Now you want to use a really sharp knife and make sure that it's clean. So I had cleaned this knife with a 2% bleach solution, and then I just rinsed it off really well. But that leaves me a really clean slice, and it looks like there's a little bit of brown here, but I'm not going to worry about that. It's not really rot. It's just a little place where the potato, became a little brown. If I was going to eat it, I would probably cut that off. Of course, if I want to, you can cut any brown off the potato that you want. Now, it does have a little area here where it looks like it may have gotten, maybe a pitchfork put in it or something like that. You would probably want to cut that off also, because that's just an area where infection can start. And you don't want any infection, any fungal disease or anything like that to start in your potatoes. So the other thing you want to do with your cut potatoes is just let them sit for at least 2 to 3 days, and that just makes a scab develop over this fresh part of the potato. And it makes it so that, different organisms, fungal diseases, things like that won't start on your potato. Now, if you do have a store in your area where you can find some sulfur dust, it's a really good idea to rub your cut potato in sulfur dust, just the different parts where it's cut. And that sulfur will keep the potato from getting scab disease. And one thing you don't want scabs on your potatoes. That's one thing that potatoes are susceptible for. The other thing that the sulfur does is it lowers the pH in the soil, and potatoes like to grow in a soil that's lower in pH, but we can talk about that later. So after you've cut your potato, go ahead and set it in an egg crate or something that's going to hold the potato, and that way it'll get the eyes to start growing and also give it time for that to heal over or to scab over on the fresh side. Now, here's a potato that I cut the other day, and you can tell it's got a nice scab on it. It's scabbed over, and this was probably cut 2 days ago. So this is ready to be put in the ground. It does have 2 eyes on it, so that potato is ready to go. Well, sometimes you'll open up your bag of potatoes, and it'll already be growing. It'll have these different growths on it, and you'll think that's great to go ahead and plant in the ground, but just take a look at those growths. Sometimes you may want to keep them, and sometimes you may not. All I would say is if there's a good growth coming out of it, anywhere from 2 or 3 inches to 6 inches, just take a hold of the area where it's going into the potato and just feel that area. Is that growth connected to the potato really well? Does it have a good hold on the potato? I would leave it then. And that's just my preference. Now for this longer one, I don't know. You can see that it's a little bit, it's a little bit loose. So I'm just going to grab it down here and see if it has a good hold. And I would say that it doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and take that eye off the potato. Now I'm just going to throw that away. It's got enough growths on here that it's going to be fine. I could even take that one off, but it is connected to the potato pretty well. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this potato in two. It's got an eye here, and then several on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that potato in two. Then I'm going to dust the potato with the sulfur dust. And I would just say if there's any longer growths coming out of your potato, just be careful as you're dusting it so that you don't break them off or make them any looser than they are. And the other thing that you can do with the dust is you can put it in a bag, put your potatoes in, or your potato pieces, and then just shake the bag around. But the dust being so fine, I would really think that you'd want to wear a mask if you're going to do it that way and, be shaking it around in a bag. Now I can go ahead and put this in the ground the way it is. The sulfur dust is enough to consider it a scab right now, but I'm going to set it in here and let the chits start growing. So that's the basic anatomy of a potato and the way you want them to be when they start growing. You want them to have at least two eyes and have this area that you've cut hardened over or sulfur dust on. And of course, like I said, you can plant potatoes whole if you want to. This is the size of about 2 eggs, but I can put that in the ground. I'm going to check these growths. That one's on there very firm. That's fairly firm. Oh well, that's not that firm. Yes, it is. So I'm just going to check these growths that are on the potato. That's pretty firm. That's firm, and so is that. And you know what? I'm going to leave all those on there, and I'm going to plant that potato whole, just sitting up like that. And it just happens to be that I am sitting it with the heel end down and the rose end up. But I would do that anyway, without even looking at it. So I'll plant that one today, and I'll plant it going up. So now let's go out and discuss some other things. Well, let's talk about the soil that we're going to use for our potatoes. What we want is something that's very loose, something that it will be easy for the potatoes to grow in. So just think about it as you look at the soil. You want something that's more or less like compost, something rich in humus. And if you think about your potato growing in this, as your potatoes grow, you want the soil to be able to move so that the potatoes can get, well, as big as they can and as many as they can. So you want the soil to move with your potatoes. And just to add a little bit extra puffiness or fluffiness to it, I also added some vermiculite to my soil. So you might want to think about that. You certainly don't have to. So this is the soil that I'm going to use. If you're going to go to the store and buy soil, I would just get something like this. It's very movable, very fluffy, it's full of compost, and make sure that it doesn't have very much fertilizer in it. Say something, let me see what's on this package. This is 0.1, 0.1, 0.08. So I would get something like that, something that hardly has any fertilizer in it at all. And that will be just the basis of growing your potatoes. Now let's just discuss the different containers we're going to use, or that we can use. You can definitely use a 5-gallon bucket, and this pot is a 5-gallon pot. And then we have a 10-gallon pot, and this is a great size if you want to say use 2 large potatoes in here, and you want a lot of room because you're wanting to grow a lot of potatoes. So that's a pretty good size. Now the other thing you can use to grow potatoes in are grow bags, or these are just grocery bags from the grocery store. But I can plant potatoes in here. The water will run through and I'll have perfect drainage, so those are just fine. Plus I do have a couple of regular grow bags that I got on the internet, and I've already planted those. Now you can also use a tote to plant your potatoes in. You can actually get anywhere from 3 or 4 potatoes in here if you want to grow them all in one container. So you could buy a few Yukon Gold potatoes, grow them all in this one container if you wanted to. Just make sure that you put enough holes in the bottom so that you have really good drainage, because with potatoes, you don't want them sitting in, say, just swampy water. You want it to be well drained, you want your soil to be well drained, and you don't want your potatoes to just be sitting in a lot of water. Okay, let's talk about fertilizer for your potatoes. What you want on the NPK scale is low, high, and high. So nitrogen low, potassium and phosphorus high. And one way to think of that is you could use the old adage, up, down, all around. So if you want something to grow up, you're going to use the nitrogen. Down and all around is the roots and the growth. So up, down, all around, that's the way I've always remembered it. So I mixed up my own fertilizer for my potatoes, just out of the different bags of fertilizer that I have. And what I ended up with was right around a 5-16-16 or a 6-18-18. I kind of fudged with it a little bit, but that's what I'm going to use for my potatoes. So let's go ahead and plant some potatoes, and I'll bring you a little bit closer. All right, well, when I go to plant my potatoes, put anywhere from, say, 3 to 4 inches of soil in the bottom, and just stick my finger in there, and it comes up to about 3 inches, but I'm just going to put a little bit more. So it'll be about 3.5, 4 inches. And then I'm going to add my fertilizer, and I'm going to put, well, 2 of these capfuls, and what that would come to is about 3 or 4 ounces of fertilizer. So I'm going to mix it around. Now, it doesn't really matter whether the potatoes come into contact with the fertilizer. They're not going to get burnt. That's not enough nitrogen to burn these potatoes. But I am going to mix it with the soil. Then I'm going to take 2 of my Yukon Gold potatoes. These have both been cut and scabbed over. Snuggle them down into the soil. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cover them up with at least another 2 to 3 inches of soil. The other thing that I'm going to add is just a little bit of sulfur dust. The sulfur that I put on the potato cuttings. I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the soil because the sulfur dust will bring down the pH of the soil, and you want your soil pH of your potatoes to be low or a little on the low scale. Now, most of your vegetables will grow really well in, say, 6.5 pH. But your potatoes are going to want anything from 6.5 down to, say, 5. So I want to lower my pH down to 5 or, say, 5.5, maybe even a little bit lower. So the sulfur is going to bring it down. Plus, I took this morning's coffee and I mixed it half and half with water, and I'm just going to water my potatoes really well with coffee water. This is diluted coffee water. So I'm just going to water them enough for it to soak through all of the soil, because this soil out here, it's fairly dry. It's not moist at all, and I want it to be moist soil. It'll come draining through the holes, and then I won't water it again for a while. And what I'll do is I'll take a moisture stick, and these are just around, $5 or $6 at Home Depot, or online you can get them fairly cheap. And what I'll do, just to check the moisture of my potatoes as they're growing, if I don't know whether they need water or not, I'll put the moisture meter in there, and it's right in the middle of moist. So that's fine for now until they start drying out and they need a little bit more water. Now, the other thing I like to use is a pH meter, and I just love this pH meter. I don't know what I'd do without it, and it's about time, it looks like, for me to go get another one. But I'm going to take the pH of the soil also. Okay, so the pH of my soil is right on 5.5, just a little bit above 5.5. So that's perfect for my potatoes. I'm not going to mess with it anymore. But the next time I water it, I probably will water it with coffee water again. Well, I'm planting all my different potato pots in this little garden bed. And if you watch Dan from the Allotment Diary channel, then this is the way he plants his potatoes. He just digs a couple of furrows in his garden bed, he puts his pots in, and then what he does is he backfills it So when the roots come out the bottom, they will just go into the dirt of the garden bed. And they'll continue to grow and get more nutrients. So that's my potato planting for today. I hope you guys learned something from this, or you could take something away from it. So I'll be seeing you later. You guys be happy, be healthy, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, you guys.